Wow, you like money and having sex with chicks, and you think you were the high IQ people who needed to reproduce that Idiocracy was talking about? We should totally hang out. Mike Judge's movie, Idiocracy, was incredibly funny and now a cult classic. However, in retrospect, whether he meant it or not, the movie promotes eugenics and increased fertility. The premise of the movie is that stupid people are outbreeding smart people. People with high IQs tend to have less kids for many reasons, while poor, uneducated people tend to have a lot more. The hero of the movie has a 100 IQ, gets frozen by the military, and wakes up 500 years later as the smartest man alive due to selective breeding. As a plot device, it's funny, and is a commentary on our current culture and the anti-intellectualism and materialism it seems to promote. The problem comes down to the fact that many of the people who watch the first part of the movie explaining the premise nod their heads and agree with him, assuming that they need to have more kids because the stupid people will send the world to hell in a handbasket. But what exactly is stupid? Cleavon, the redneck man in the first explanation, who had a huge number of offspring over many generations, was stupid. But what made him stupid? Well, first off, he was poor. People who are poor rarely get exposed to different ways of thinking. They go to worse schools where bullying is much worse, and if survival is important, being tough, not smart, takes a higher priority. Cleavon was also a serial philanderer, indicating he seriously lacked cost-benefit analysis and impulse control, things that are learned from people around you and your upbringing. Studies show that prisoners that get training in these two things have a much lower recidivism rate because they can stop and think and weigh the consequences without just going on automatic. Education decreases your chances of cheating if you're a man, as you can weigh the benefits. If no one around you has good cost-benefit analysis or impulse control, you will most likely not pick up that skill. If you were abused at a younger age, you will more likely be like Cleavon as well, as just spankings have been shown to drop IQ. If no one around you has any ambition, or even worse, if ambition or education is looked down on in your small anti-intellectual subculture such as white trash or ghetto culture, not trusting the elites is viewed as sacred, and they often believe that they have something better than the well-educated because they have God and heritage. Cleavon had a low IQ, but what is IQ? IQ tests many things from spatial recognition and manipulation, short-term memory, math skills, long-term memory, ability to adapt to novel problems, the ability to adapt to new situations, the ability to classify, abstract consistency, and the ability to treat the hypothetical seriously and manipulate it in our minds. For the majority of time, most of these particular traits were useless to the majority of the world. Long-term memory was useful, especially to a hunter-gatherer, as they had to be encyclopedias of what grew where and when, and what was edible. However, the rest were nowhere near as important to surviving. Over time, a certain tiny crust of thinkers were able to figure out how to focus less on surviving, and instead had time for thinking. And with new technology created by these new ideas, they would breed more ideas. Most of the poor, however, molded their minds and mental resources to be the best at the class they were doomed to, and be the best at the culture they were surrounded by. Those who rose through the ranks to enter the elite fared poorly, more often than not among their fellow unlearned poor. They hadn't molded their minds to fit into that class culture, which led to friction and isolation as they were unrelatable. They failed at culture, but later in life they succeeded among the elites and shook up the world. Every decade, IQ increases by 3 points worldwide, except for Scandinavian nations, which raises only about 1 point this last decade. It has high IQ to begin with, and has some of the most renowned education, nutrition, poverty, stress reduction, and pollution controls in the world. Poor nutrition not only is an IQ dropper, it also drops a kid's ability to focus in school, ensuring you can't learn the building blocks to be successful at future subjects. In a food desert, you can get plenty of shelf-stable carbs and meat that will give you a body that can make you physically good at sports, but it takes a complex set of vitamins and time and access to fresh vegetables to really shape your mind and health. If you believe as a single young person that you with a low income can easily get access to fruits and veggies, Try being a single mother working 3 jobs with kids and no car with terrible public transportation, and try and take the time to go out of your neighborhood and cart back those veggies and prep them. It ain't gonna happen. Even worse is because of this, the culture in poor areas just accept poverty food as the norm. Just having books in the house, time to read books to your kids, and the time to spend directly talking to them and using a wide range vocabulary impacts IQ. And if your kid is in a daycare all the time because you're too busy working, that one-on-one, not to mention the 3 times the stress levels measured in kids in daycare, is going to have a significant impact on kids' IQs. Poor people live in the worst polluted areas, dropping IQ as well. Studies point to lead from car exhaust as a rise in violence in 60s and 70s, as people had lower impulse controls. Coal plants pump out mercury every day, and smog from other pollutants correlate with autism, ADHD, and other neurological disorders. The ability to sit and focus or to communicate is imperative to scoring well on the IQ test. Your chances of getting help for neurological disorders are very low, and if you have a parent or authority figure with a psychological problem, you are very likely to pick up some traits of their ways of thinking, which makes you less successful in life. Depression can be crippling, making you make worse decisions, keeping you poor. And just being poor in general can drop your IQ and make bad decisions. A study showed people who had money before the crisis scored significantly lower on IQ tests after they hit hard times, and they tended to make worse financial decisions. Racism, blind nationalism, and conspiracy theorism always rises after a financial recession. IQ tests your potential in a Western academic world. One cannot have a high IQ and not be intelligent, which is why it's used in so many experiments. But one can be intelligent and have a low IQ. A person with a 70 IQ today would score 100 on the IQ test 100 years ago. Our IQ also drops over our lifetime because our fluid memory declines, partially through the lack of use on academia, as we work more on honing our crystalline memory for skills. Many times crystalline memory skills are never honed by poorer people with less time, as most people, unless they have a rare neurological disorder, get good at creating long-term memories through mnemonic devices and other tricks. As a tutor and a teacher, I know that a person is only good at math and science if they practice. The brain is a muscle and must be worked out. Boredom is like the soreness you get at the gym. You are getting smarter when you push through it. Reading, math, science, and skepticism are all devices that don't come naturally to us, and we have cobbled them together, and only culturally evolved in specific places for specific functions. As someone who has repeatedly helped raise people's math and science grades, especially women and people of color, from F's and D's to A's and B's, who has always been told they were bad at math, and it was implied it was because of their race or gender, I look at IQ and intelligence differently from the way a lot of people do. I was brilliant at chemistry when I first went to college. I have Asperger's and really was tired of having no friends or significant others, so I spent college working on honing my social skills. My abilities at chemistry and math dropped. I spent more brain power on practicing being social than academically smart. I would be a chemist now if I had not had any drive to be social. People who know me assume I must have an incredibly high IQ, as I know a plethora of facts and knowledge. They are always a bit surprised when they find out that I only tested at 135, but I've used my intelligence and pushed it to its limits, learned incredible tricks of memory, and focused my mind to be laser-focused on learning. My mother taught me to have the hunger for knowledge, which is a very powerful thing, and I feel very stagnated and driftless if I'm not learning something new. This is the opposite of many subcultures, especially ones of poverty, as people not well educated often feel threatened when their kids know more than they do. They also feel like their culture is threatened when the kids learn things that go against their culture. One will continue to see signs that IQ in the world must be dropping, especially with the rise of social media, as before, the elites had a monopoly on the media, and everyone watched TV or read books. When the opportunity arose, many intellectually minded and well-educated people cut the cord on cable and moved online. As the Nielsen ratings only took TV viewing into account, there was a selective pressure to have less and less intelligent shows on TV. Now that the Nielsen ratings have adjusted to include streaming, there has been a resurgence of intelligent shows, and is still in transit to figure out how to appeal to the most viewers. The world hasn't gotten stupider. Stupid now just has a platform people can easily find and see. The poorest cities have been shown to be the most class segregated. When people interact with people of different social classes, they learn skills they would never get from their own social class. Traditionally, middle class learn from the rich managerial skills. Generationally poor people learn white-collar skills and habits from middle-class people. Race realists, however, call for segregation of races because while crime is high in mixed cities and states, neighborhood layouts and city segregation is never discussed in these stats. They cite the happiness index of the Scandinavian nations as proof that segregation and that they are mostly white increases happiness and prosperity. However, Scandinavian class segregation is almost non-existent by comparison to the rest of the world. Smart people breeding does not create smart people. Smart people raising kids protected from IQ damaging things creates more smart people, and given the tools, even the less educated people can use them to have kids that will do even better than them. Bear baiting, gory public executions, lynching, and cockfighting was the entertainment of the masses just 150 years ago. No different than Ow My Balls and rehabilitation in Idiocracy. Idiocracy is not a documentary, it is a funny movie that is a comment on our culture. If you can't grasp that, then I'm sorry, I must seem pretty tarded to you and sound like my shit's all fucked up and I talk like a fag.